Welcome to the 2021 New Venture Championship semifinal round. This year, the New Venture Championship received entries from 75 teams representing 10 different countries. This reflects one of the advantages of having a virtual competition. It's open to all from around the world without the worry of traveling to Oregon for the event. The 16 teams you will see today were chosen by a panel of over 50 judges in our qualifying round that started back in February. Each track will have 4 teams, and during the event, those teams have 30 minutes to deliver their presentation and address questions from the panel of judges. This is a fully interactive event, meaning that the judges can interrupt and ask questions and at any time. The judges in the semifinals score the teams based on their submitted business plans, the presentation and question and answer, and their overall viability. One team from each track will advance to the finals. The semifinalists for this track are Uniphage, Yale-NUS College, Singapore. Empower Me, Western University, Ontario, Canada. Biocilaxy, Oklahoma State University. Gene Gazer, the University of Oregon.
Hi everyone, we're Sophie and Chris, founders of Uniphage, and we're building a world free of disease. I hate to say that, but at least one of your great-grandparents or their siblings almost certainly died from bacterial disease. This is not surprising, considering the bacterial diseases were the most common cause of death before the 1940s. Even a simple wound could kill you. Antibiotics have changed this reality, but even nowadays, more than 6 million people die annually from bacterial diseases. With the rising antibiotic resistance, we are headed back into the era in which bacterial diseases are life-threatening. There are other fundamental issues with using antibiotics to fight bacterial diseases. First, antibiotics don't work against many bacterial pathogens in the first place. Moreover, when applied, antibiotics eliminate all or most bacteria around, including the beneficial ones. This often leads to long-term health consequences, including lethal outcomes. Additionally, it's really hard and time-consuming to develop new antibiotics. So we are taking an alternative route to come up with a better and safer way to fight bacterial diseases. Bacteria, just like us, have diseases. Naturally, they are often infected with bacterial viruses called bacteriophages, or simply phages. Phages, unlike antibiotics, are really precise. Each of them kills a very specific bacterial pathogen each. Phages are completely safe for humans in the environment, and they're already used for a small number of food disease control applications, which provides us with a great approval case. However, currently, it's really hard and time-consuming to produce phage solutions, which is precisely why so few of them are currently available on the market. The current method to produce phage solutions is almost 100 years old. It's outdated, very manual, and non-scalable. There is more issues involved in the process. For example, it's currently impossible to produce phage solutions against the bacteria that cannot be grown in a lab. And a lot of devastating diseases are caused by bacteria that are unculturable. Additionally, it's really hard to manually characterize which phages infect which bacteria. And when resistance evolves, just like it happens with antibiotics, it's currently impossible to modify phages in a predictable manner for them to evade this resistance. Our AI-powered platform allows us to replace every single one of these steps and solve every single one of these problems that exists in this 100-year-old process. We've already built the best model to date to predict which phages can infect which bacteria. Our model has state-of-the-art accuracy and precision, both of which are more than 95%. Our current R&D focuses on producing more proprietary data sets. Our wet lab experiments to test our models are currently outsourced to a leading Bacteriophage lab on a long-term contract. Our models and proprietary data sets form our unique intellectual property, and our phage solutions themselves will be patented. This is how our bacteriophage solution process will look like. First, the target bacterial pathogen or pathogens will be sequenced in a traditional, widely used ways. Then our deep learning models will be used to predict which phages can infect these bacteria. Those phages then will be tested and produced, assembled and delivered in a ready-to-use form to our customers. We aim to be the end-to-end producer of bacteriophage solutions, with some parts of this process, including large-scale bacteriophage solution manufacturing, being outsourced initially. With our platform, making new antibacterial solutions will take weeks instead of years, which is what happens now.
We will first develop solutions for the agricultural field, which has significantly lower regulatory entry barrier than human diseases or livestock production. Only EPA approval is required to bring our solutions to the market. The first target for our technology is citrus greening, a devastating and currently incurable disease, which causes more than $2 billion in damages each year in the US alone. While there are no strategies to cure or even contain the spread of the disease, the mitigation cost is still as high as $800 per acre. This caused many of the citrus producers to operate at a loss for years now, and even led Florida to lose its long-held title as the leader in citrus production. We have already validated this market by talking to more than 20 potential customers and more than 30 potential partners during NSF Bay Area ICOR course. We have estimated our serviceable obtainable market to be more than $4.5 billion, and it continues to grow as the antibiotic resistance is on the rise and the use of antibiotics outside of human health is increasingly prohibited. Long term, we plan to be the end-to-end producers of phage solutions. We believe we can reach over $1 billion in revenue by 2030, thanks to the low production costs of phages and the exponential scalability of our platform. Short term, to offset the high R&D costs, we will offer consulting services that leverage our AI models and our unique expertise that combines phages and deep learning. We expect to make between $30,000 and $100,000 per contract and to land the first 10 contracts within a year from now. Our main competitors include antibiotics, other phage companies, and experimental antimicrobials. None of those solutions, however, is as safe, environmentally friendly, or scalable as ours. Our grand vision is to become the next-gen pharma company. We believe we can go past even the unicorn stage thanks to the scalability of our approach, which marries virology and deep learning. Our key close-term goals include further improving our models, getting our first phage solutions approved by EPA, and generating revenue from the first 10 consulting agreements.
We are currently part of the Global ImagineLife Accelerator, Panacea Stars Accelerator at University of Oxford and National University of Singapore Incubator. For the mentorship that we receive through those programs, we successfully improving our product development and bringing our next-gen pharma vision forward. We've also already secured valuable contracts with the leading bacteriophage lab, extensively talked to governmental agencies, potential customers and partners, won non-dilutive funding at multiple competitions, and built state-of-the-art AI models. Our team has the required data science and biology skills to bring our next-gen pharma company vision forward. Chris, my co-founder, comes from a data science background, and I come from biology background. Additionally, we have awesome scientific mentors, both of which are professors at Yale-NUS College. Each of them has the biology and computational expertise. Through our work, we aim to eliminate all bacterial diseases, build next-gen tech pharma companies solving the most pressing issues in medicine and biology. So, multiple sustainable development goals, including zero hunger and good health. Let's build a world free of disease together. Thank you. Are we supposed to stop sharing now? We can.
You can keep sharing if you have other like backup slides you want to go to or other
Thank you,
things.
Costan.
Yeah, you can keep sharing.
Perfect. Well, so I think we're jumping into questions here. I mean, well done. You know, I'd be really curious to what degree of maturity is your current AI model, and can you elaborate on what it will take to reach either the minimum viable product that you would need to take it into the market?
Yes.
Yeah. So our current model has the state-of-the-art performance when predicting the hosts of bacteriophages on a species level. So we can predict which bacteria the given phage will infect up to its species.
Want to explain?
Yeah. So basically, okay, I can use an analogy of if we were predicting if you are at home or outside, we can predict that you're at home, but not precisely which room inside that home you are in yet. To make this technology viable to develop solutions and completely eliminate many of the current methods needed that need to be performed while developing them, we need to get to the strain level, which is an analogy of a room in that setting. And to do that, we need to collect more data, or we're currently testing computational approaches that allow us to tap into much more data on that resolution. That will allow us to further improve it.
On the important side, though, the models that we have at this point is still significantly better than absolutely anything that has been published, because nobody has used deep learning in the bacteriophage field basically ever for any of this kind of applications. Yeah, the first classical machine learning paper came out in like 2018 trying to predict something. Doesn't work so well. And yeah, this model is basically still the best by far of what is out there.
Yeah.
I think we answered.
Yeah.
No more data science for today.
Thank you.
This is Brian. I thought you guys did a great job. The quick question about the competition: what would prevent a big established company kind of in the space in some periphery from entering and competing in a vigorous and way?
Absolutely, our favorite question. There's a lot of answers. I will start with the answer of how we can make sure it does not happen, or it does not happen soon. And the best way to do this is to actually collect more proprietary data, because it's hard to build models, but if you have data that nobody else has, it means that you have a really strong edge. So this is exactly what we are working on right now. We do have data that others do not have that was collected for computational approaches, but this is precisely what we are using any funding we have now, and that's any funding that we'll have, hopefully in the future, to basically increase our data sets, so as we did have this competitive advantage over others, including data sets that are collected through manual approaches. So basically, you go to a lab in a matrix manner, you test, let's say, on the side you have bacteriophages, here you have bacteria, and you test which one infects which. And then you reintroduce this data back into the model. At this point, it would still take companies quite a while to develop what you have, primarily because there is no funding in the bacteriophage field, because but there's like 110 people in the world who properly work in the field of deep learning and bacteriophages, because it's emerging. And you need to have a pretty strong team to be able to basically marry all the virology stuff with all the deep learning stuff. This is what we have now. But again, the data is basically the most important thing in this field, because we can have the coolest models we do, but long term, it's all about data. I hope I answered your question.
You did. I don't totally understand the dynamic of the model. Certainly understand having a model and having the data. Just how hard is it for someone else or prevent from someone else entering that and gathering that same amount of information with more funding or larger in some capacity, I guess?
Absolutely. Yeah. So nobody's working on it right now, but that's why we are basically trying to collect more data to train models with more available data. and then we will patent the solutions themselves. So let's say when it comes to solution against citrus greening, we will patent the minimum viable number of bacteriophages that we need to use to be able to fight this disease, and then there will be like additional patent layers. But basically, the main protection in terms of the like why nobody will be able to tackle the same diseases with the same phages or with similar ones is pretty much patent protection. But there'll be no patent protection of models because you can file a patent for sake of showing to investors that you filed a patent, but you won't be granted the patent because there's nothing to basically be granted it on in these particular cases.
Makes sense. Thanks.
So this question sort of follows on with Brian's. I think you've done a very good job showing that there is a need, but probably, agriculture is probably one of the oldest industries in the, since we were started as a human race. And I'm trying to understand why the big players have not gone after this since it is such a large market. Do you have a reason why? Is it development cost? Is it marketing costs? But there clearly is a need. So why hasn't the competition done anything about this?
That's a really good question. I will start with answering why there is no solution against citrus greening, especially the kind of solutions that we are developing, because citrus greening is one of the largest problems that exist in agriculture, especially in the US at the moment. And then we'll move into why bacteriophages are not more widely used in agriculture itself. When it comes to citrus greening, the problem with the bacteria that causes the disease is that you cannot grow it in a lab, which basically means you cannot put it in a petri dish or in a reactor and just grow it to make it multiply and then apply environmental sample on the petri dish to be able to isolate phages. Just taking one step back, to isolate bacteriophages nowadays, what you do is you grow the bacteria and you take environmental sample, as I just mentioned, you apply it in a petri dish with the bacteria, you wait for basically the flakes to appear, they like have really particular kind of shape and color. And then you sequence those phages. By sequencing, I mean you receive the genomic information of those phages. Because the bacteria causing the disease cannot be cultured, it cannot be grown in a lab, you cannot isolate phages. So at this point, there is literally no way to do this. It just does not exist. There is players who are trying to tackle citrus greening from other perspectives. No solution is available or approved in the market. Any genetic modifications to trees that you can do now are not sustainable because you have to basically replant the whole plantations, and then the bacteria are going to involve resistance again, and then you have to replant the whole plantations again. So this is one of the key reasons for why these kind of solutions, which are generally widely discussed at least, are not available against citrus greening. When it comes to some experimental solutions, there is some in production. One of the key problems is that those solutions are actually expensive because most of them are based on some proteins. And peptides or proteins are generally definitely not as cheap to produce as bacteriophages. So yeah, this is basically the key advantage there. But at this point, as I said, no solution is approved to be used against the disease. When it comes to agricultural market and bacterial diseases in general, there is several companies, including, let's say, Omnilytics, who did bring several solutions against several bacterial diseases to the market, particularly phage-based solutions. One of the key problems is that it takes a really, really long time to develop those solutions. So while we have improved significantly using computational methods for bacteriophage production and characterizing bacteriophages themselves by characterizing and understanding either their genomic information or anything downstream of that genomic information, it's still really hard to do that. It's really hard to understand how to combine each bacteriophage with what, to isolate those bacteriophages, to adjust those cocktails, basically combination of bacteriophages against the disease. And this is pretty much the main reason for why nothing better exists out there, because people are literally using the methods that was used to isolate very first bacteriophages, like basically almost 100 years ago. So it's quite clear that this has to be changed, but primarily because there has never been funding in the field, especially from a scientific perspective. There was no opportunity to change this field, like let's say cancer field was changed. If you go and read cancer papers, there's so many cool deep learning things happening there because we have money in the field. When it comes to bacteriophage field, basically both institutions and anyone else is struggling with actually bringing any advances into this area, unfortunately, because that's important. Bacterial diseases are not a joke and won't be a joke, unfortunately. I hope I answered your question, at least partially.
I think partially, but I'm still struggling to see how. And I love the concept. I think you have shown a need. I think all of us are hypersensitive given the coronavirus, and we're all very sensitive to all of these things. I'm trying to understand how we're going to get from the concept and the need to actually delivering to the market without with you warding off the competition. Because what you don't want is, you don't want to spend all this money and have your investors spend all this money, and at the end of the day someone else takes your idea and somebody else markets it for mass distribution.
Yeah, you're completely right on this one. I guess the best way for us to do this is to basically, frankly speaking, just accelerate the development of how we are getting data from computational and wet lab approaches, and continue improving on the model, which is what we generally do day and night at this point, like going there and doing this. And then the best protection that we'll be able to get is probably the patent protection to protect the exact solutions against respective diseases. So whenever we have anything viable, or at least semi-viable, against citrus greening, we will definitely go out there and patent the combination of those phages. At least a provisional patent will definitely be filed, and then we'll probably continue improving on that provisional patent. But whenever we have a patent of something beyond the model, we'll definitely file for it. It's the very point we can do this.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Kate Harmon here. I would like to talk a little bit about your go-to-market strategy, and maybe you can outline your next sort of 12-month roadmap. What are you hoping to achieve over that time, and maybe highlight how that aligns with your financial plan and milestones that you want to achieve over these 12 months. I'm also curious if you could also talk more about the Phage contract that you've been able to develop with a partner. Can you talk a little bit about what that consists of, so that partnership?
I guess I'm going to take this one. Thanks for your question. I will start with the later part of the question about the Phage about the contracts that we have. So outside of the other contracts that we are currently discussing with both European and American partners, the contracts that we have and that we are heavily utilizing is with basically with the leading Canadian Bacteriophage lab. Okay, I will explain what exactly it is. So there is a concept of a Phage Bank, and Phage Bank is basically a place that has a huge collection of bacteriophages and generally a huge collection of bacteria. Generally, to like order one phage, let's say, you need to pay between $300 and $800 for one phage. For bacteria, it's about 0.75, sorry, of the price. When it comes to our contract, what happens is that we basically give this lab, this Phage Bank, one out of the main 5 Phage banks in the world, the data that we want to be tested. So we say, let's say bacteria A infects phage B. Could you please test it for us? But it's done on a much larger scale. And we already have all those phages in-house, which means we don't have to pay for ordering anything. We pay hourly. We pay significantly less than we have to be paying for this. Like, the zeros should be in the end, frankly speaking. And yeah, we basically have we have a large fee in the year from a grant that we had to close. And we send them the information about what combinations we want to test to see how our models performs now and if it has improved. And then they, within a couple of weeks, which is also important, it takes just a couple of weeks as opposed to taking, let's say, half a year to get data back. They tell us which phages affected which bacteria and which didn't. We also do it double blinded, so basically they don't know what actually is predicted by the model. So we tell us, and then we see the predictions for them not to be biased towards providing us with the data that we actually want to see. Yeah, so this is the long-term contract that we have with this basically kind of Phage Bank. In terms of the first part of the question, which is go-to-market strategy. At this very point, the most important thing for us is to produce more data and to make the model commercially viable. And by commercially viable, I mean, even if it can predict with a 30% probability which bacteriophage can affect which bacteria, honestly, even less than 30%, like 20%. This is already amazing because it would mean that 1 out of 5 phages that it has work against the bacteria against which you can predict, like you can do basically, especially when it comes to unculturable bacteria, because as I said, there is no method to predict phages against the bacteria that can be grown in the lab. So this is our current focus. We expect that it's going to take between 3 and 9 months to develop this model fully to be able to produce citrus grading solution. I think it's probably going to take more like 4, considering that we get the data back and forth really quickly with the Canadian lab, which signifies our R&D. After that, to get the actual predictions against any number of bacterial pathogens, be it citrus greening, which is our primary target, or literally any other bacterial disease, it's a matter of hours, because you just model, you give it a genome and you ask, what are the predictions? And then you test those predictions, either by yourself or with your partners. In our case, probably mostly Canadian lab, but we'll need to set up a lab at some point as well. So this is our primary focus, and we hope to have a preliminary solution against citrus greening definitely by the end of this 9 months, because as I said, the hard part is the model. Getting solutions, especially predictions, is really quickly, happens really quickly. Additionally, to test those solutions in the lab, so to actually test if our predictions are correct, also takes days or weeks, like on the order of like 1 to 2 weeks, sometimes less, because it depends on how long it takes to grow the bacteria from purely biological perspective. In terms of consulting agreements, we are talking to quite a few people because we generally have tried to extensively talk to people in the deep learning field and in the bacteriophage field to better understand some trends, understand what they've tried, what has worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. And we offer to, for example, like write grants and do those kind of things, because we are some of the few people who are actually using deep learning approach in the bacteriophage field, and the only ones who use it for this particular application. So we will definitely try to get some contracts, unless we can bring citrus greening solution like to market within months, which means we won't need any contracts in that case because the market is too large. And then our key milestone will definitely be getting the solution approved. But I guess also prior to this, which is something we just discussed, filing at least a provisional patent on the minimum viable number of bacteriophages to target citrus greening is also going to be a really important milestone, because this is when we'll have the best possible protection of our solution against citrus greening, because nobody will be able to catch up for a really long time if that's what happens.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, just one quick note in terms of distributing solutions, because it came up before. We'll distribute them from citrus associations, because A, we're keeping in contact. B, it seems like a really good node connecting farmers and citrus growers in different places. So regional associations are quite active, especially because citrus greening is actually devastating the industry. So this is the people who we believe are the key distributors for us for our solutions.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, thank you.
So this is Jeff. Speaking of citrus stuff, I noticed in your business plan that I have pulled up here that you almost have like a pre-scheduled miracle. You reference information about the miracle solution. What happens if citrus doesn't work out as well? In your first product line, do you have other types of agricultural activities that you would target, or do you have enough confidence to go straight into citrus at this point?
This is a great question. There's 2 answers to this one. First one is we've been trying to build a proper pipeline to be able to go into citruses for a pretty long time. For past at least half a year, we've been like trying extensively to talk to those people, understand how exactly to enter a field. But we do understand that things might not work, and we need to have plan B, C, D, E, like frankly speaking, as many as possible. And this is precisely why our model is so helpful, because it can be used to produce to basically get predictions for new targets within hours, and they'll get those targets tested within days to weeks. Which basically means that when it's fully viable, or viable, honestly, like some decent level, which as I described was between like 20-30% should be sufficient at this point. We can go against any bacterial pathogens in any field. We do have a couple of other targets in mind in agriculture, for example, Pierce's disease. But it's basically not as big of an issue because we will know quite quickly if our solution works or doesn't work against citrus green, because it's going to take us a couple of weeks to test it. And we can use this model to set up, let's say, 10 new pipelines and then see which one of those ones work out best in lab settings, and then go against that particular disease first, bring some revenue in, which is a good thing about your model because it's truly scalable. I hope it answers the question. It's cool you pulled up our business plan. I wish I remembered what exactly sincere, but skipping.
Yeah, no, that was great. You said because the information about the miracle solution that worked for the farmers in the community will spread very quickly. So that's why I said you had almost a pre-scheduled miracle in there, which is why I pulled on that question. Thank you.
It would be kind of cool.
So debt collections has always been a problematic industry. There is no straightforward way for debtors to manage their debt payments. If you're delinquent on a loan, there's no way for you to sort of communicate with the banks and come up with a solution. Debt collectors are very expensive, they're ineffective, and they use a lot of shame-based tactics. They often use harassment-based tactics to collect on their debt, and which often ends up in the news, and it's really bad reputation for the lenders who have to resort to writing millions off in debt that they cannot recover. So this has been a problem. This has been an age-old problem. And why are we talking about it right now? Why are we trying to sort of solve this right now? It's mainly because the trust deficiency is at peak because of three main reasons. Privacy and safety concerns have sort of been brought into light over the past few years, but new rules allow debt collectors to use digital platforms to provide new avenues for debt collectors to harass customers and sort of use text, email, and social media to collect on debt. Secondly, COVID has increased the levels of household debt, and research indicates that certain racial segments are disproportionately affected by the increase in household debt, mainly because of COVID. So debt collections has been coming under the spotlight for a while now. Banks who have been very complacent in this sector have sort of identified the need to digitize these platforms, and they're trying to sort of bring in new tech tools to tackle debt collection. So banks are trying to sort of digitize debt collection, which is what we're trying to do. So what is a solution? A solution is a one-stop shop to manage all debt commitments that is going to be cheaper, faster, and a safer way to set for debt collections. In our minimal viable product, we'll be looking at a hassle-free way of settling debt, along with some form of real-time debt negotiation. And in our second and third iterations, in our third iterations, we will bring AI into the equation, and we would provide AI-driven debt counseling. But we have a product demonstration here for you, which will give you a much better understanding of how our product is going to work. So please do let me know if you cannot hear it. But let me just play it right now.
Welcome to the product demo. Let's take a look at the user experience on Empower Me to figure out how the user can use the app to negotiate their debt, get debt counseling recommendations, and ultimately settle their debt. Let's log in. This takes us to John's landing page. It shows us his account summary, including the total debt outstanding, the amount due in the next 30 days, and the number of outstanding loans. It also shows him specific details about each of those 3 outstanding loans, including the due date, the statement due, and the interest rate. It makes sure to highlight important information about each loan, such as the fact that this Libro loan is due in 5 days. Let's manage the payments. Here's John's personal financial information. This is all based on John's manually inputted information in his personal profile, which is easy to edit or to sync with any other financial app or bank. John can tell us any of this information, including the reason why he's behind on his payments, which helps the bank assess whether to accept various offers. Now that we're back on this page, We can see that John only has $1,100 available this month to make payments. Since he actually owes $2,300, John's understandably stressed about how he can manage this debt. Using specific information about each loan, our app makes recommendations about how John can best allocate his funds this month. This is the debt counseling portion of the app. It shows how best to split up that amount between these two loans to have the least impact on his credit score and credit history. Now, we know he actually owes Libro $900 this month. But since we want to recommend that he pays $200, John's going to have to open the lines of communication with the bank. So he clicks on the negotiate button. This is John's negotiation summary with Libro. It shows him the various financial details at the top and then our possible recommended plans for him to select from. John reviews the plans and picks Plan 1. This gives him the clear and specific details of this plan, so John knows definitely what he's offering and what the terms are. Once he's read everything through, he clicks Agree. And the offer has been successfully submitted to Libro. He can expect to hear back within 2 working days, and we'll make sure to notify him as soon as we have a response. When he gets the notification, he can find out whether or not Libro has agreed to the offer. If they have, great. If they haven't, we make new offers available to him to consider to send a new offer to Libro to continue to negotiate this payment based on his personal information that he's provided to us and that we provide to the bank. Now that it's time to make a payment, all John has to do is click Pay Now. We've made it easy for him to select from a variety of payment modes, including credit cards and Bitcoin, because we like to be future looking. We ultimately want to incentivize users to set up pre-authorized payments to make it easy for the user to never forget or miss a payment and to give the creditor peace of mind knowing that a payment is forthcoming. Once John selects his payment mode, that's all he needs to do. The payment is quick and seamless with no clicking between multiple apps. It automatically updates his account summary on the landing page, including the total debt and the debt due in the next 30 days. Now John can sleep more easily at night knowing that he has this resource available in his pocket 24 hours a day to help him manage his debt, settle his debt, and pay his debt.
Perfect. Let's move on to competitor analysis. Cesar, do you want to take over?
Sure. Thank you, Gemma. So, of course, we are not alone in this industry, in the debt settlement industry. There are already companies helping users with advisory and helping understand better how to deal better with the financial institutions and how to manage better their debts. And also there are also companies that are helping the financial institutions as an agencies, right? To help the banks and other financial institutions to recover money from the debtors. However, EmpowerMe, our solution has a better and a strong value proposition because we are mainly tackling the best and the most important factors and points of disruptions. First of all, we will be not only integrated with the users because we will have the platforms, but also we will be integrated with the financial institutions. So we will be avoiding and eliminating the middlemen. We will have a digital environment, which is going to provide a better user experience for our customers. And also, given that we will be connecting them, users and financial institutions, we will make a more efficient process, which is going to provide us to be more attractive for the banks and users in terms of fees. And finally, of course, the transparent fees. We will be not only a good option, we will see the numbers later on, but we will have a better proposal for the banks, for the users, and our conditions will be transparent and we will be free of harassment. Because of this, if we analyze the most important attributes for both the financial institutions and the users, we are on the top right of the quadrants in terms of affordability and customer intimacy. If we analyze the target market, we have made some research regarding the regions and the countries where we will be developing EmpowerMe. And we have defined that we will capture users from United States, Canada, and Europe in the first 5 years of operations. To understand the target market, we have identified our total addressable and obtainable market. As the total addressable market, we are consider all the population with death in these regions. As the serviceable market, we are considering the high level of unsecured debt. And finally, for the serviceable addressable market, we are considering the delinquency rates of these regions, which help us to understand that there are almost 10 million people that we can capture that would find EmpowerMe attractive. And considering the average debt of these countries, we are talking about a market of $140 billion. As you can see, our target market is extensive, is lucrative, and most importantly, is known by us in terms of demographics and psychographics. Our customer persona has less than 1 month of savings, is between 25 and 55 years old, married, and mostly living in developed countries. Also holds a higher education degree. Additionally, based on the customer service and interviews that we have done during this process, we know that she is a moderate tech user, so it would be interesting for her to see that EmpowerMe has a platform, is worried about her ability to pay the bills, and wish to have more guidance on debt settlement. Considering these demographics and psychographics, we are targeting people that are willing and able to pay the debts, and willing and unable to do it. That's basically the group of people that we consider will be attractive to work with EmpowerMe. Having this clear understanding of the personas allow us to focus our resources on effective activities to generate both awareness and early adoption. I will pass it off to Hema, who's going to explain the go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, thanks, Cesar. So now that we have looked at our customers, let's talk about how we're going to capture them. We are in the B2B business at first. We're going to be servicing mostly the banks and credit unions. So in terms of our go-to-market strategy, we would like to look at what are we selling, who are we selling it to, and how are we going to sell it. What are we selling? We're trying to digitize the middleman. We're trying to digitize the debt collection industry. And through that process, we will be offering cheaper collections for the banks and also simplifying the regulatory process. Banks have to audit the communication that takes place between debt collectors and customers. And since in our case, it happens through digital platforms, that auditing process will be taken care of by AI-driven mechanisms. Who are we selling it to? We understand that capturing large national banks at first is going to be a big challenge because they would not want to work with a startup. So we are going to focus our attention on specialized lenders like Fairstone in Canada, digital banks like Tangerine, again in Canada, and credit unions like Libro. We've already had discussions with the CEO of Libro, who has shown some interest in our product. How are we going to sell it? Now, this is the most important part because getting into the banking ecosystem is a tough task. So we initially intend to partner with specialized integrators that the banks have approved and vetted and who are already on those banking platforms. So we're talking about Intuit, Celerio, and Flinks of the world. And we intend to sort of partner with them and integrate our solution with their solution. Once we're in the banking ecosystem, the lenders would want to test our efficiency. So they would do some A/B test or champion test where they would send us a set of customer files and send debt collectors the same set of customer files and see who collects faster. In this case, we hope we would come up on top. And eventually we would start facilitating debt settlements and real-time debt negotiation, as we explained earlier in our minimum viable product and our product demonstration. So now that we know about our partners, we've spoken to a great deal of banks. For instance, Hugh Mackay from BMO Partners told us that this is the ideal time to be launching a product like this because with open banking coming into Canada and North America, banks are opening up their platforms, and banks are showing a greater willingness to partner with startups like us. So it's a really great time to disrupt the debt collections industry. So now that we know about our go-to-market strategy, let's talk a little bit about our business model. We intend to take a commission from each successful settlement that takes place through our platform. So I'll explain it to you with our best case scenario for 2023. By 2023, if everything goes right, we would have captured about 25,000 users, representing less than 0.3% of our serviceable market. Each user will bring in an average debt load of about $10,000, which would get settled through our platform, generating about $1,500 in average commission per user. And we'll be looking at about 37.5 million in revenues by 2023 if everything goes right. So our revenue would be driven by three main things: average debt load per customer, the number of customers that we can capture, and also the commission that we charge. In our worst case scenario, we would have captured about 300,000 users, each with an average debt load of about $7,000 and a commission rate of about 5%. This would allow us to generate about 47 million in revenues by 2025. But our research has indicated that capturing 1 million users is definitely within our reach. And in a very optimistic scenario, we could be looking at revenues and upwards of about $1 billion, provided that the average debt load per customer is going to be about $15,000. Of course, things always don't go right. So our most conservative and most likely scenario would be about $100 to $200 million in revenue by 2025, with about 300,000 customers and an average commission rate of about 5 to 8%. So let's talk about why we are here. We're here to ask for a pre-seed investment of $300,000, which should allow us to do develop our minimum viable product in 2021, hire key staff, and also work out on some legal aspects. And this would be sufficient to get us through to the seed funding round in 2022, through which we expect to raise about $800,000. This is what in terms of the investment, about the founding partners will invest $50,000 alongside with the angel investors on a pari passu basis. Our security would be common equity. Investors would get a put option exercisable after 3 years, guaranteeing a 3 times ROI. And as sweeteners, we would offer a board seat and also the option to invest at a 15% discount in the pre-seed in the seed round. As you can see, we have put together a really capable leadership team with over 15 years of experience in analytics, marketing, and finance. And also, we've recently hired a chief legal officer who would sort of help us with the regulatory aspects of this product. And yeah, we're really happy to take your questions. And thank you so much for listening to us.
Nice.
All right, I'll go. And great job, guys. I really see a lot of great potential, I think, for where this can serve the market. You know, one question I'd have for you, at least on my limited knowledge of how things work, at least here in the States, you know, oftentimes when you negotiate some sort of settlement to your debt, you know, two things happen. You are left with a tax liability for some of that debt that's written off. And my understanding is oftentimes the credit issuing institution also closes that line of credit. They you know, consider it, even if you're going to pay it off over time as part of the settlement, you no longer have access to, say, the remaining balance on your credit card or the remaining you know, chargeability. So have you given any consideration to the more of that regulatory or legal framework and how that might impact the willingness of the user base to use your product?
So are you referring to like the fact that they will be able to write off the uncollected debt as a tax liability? Are you looking at it from a tax angle or?
Yeah, I would say I was using those as two examples of things that might turn people off to using it, right? So I may be able to settle the debt for something favorable, but at the end of the year, at least in the States, the IRS is going to come back and say, hey, you now owe taxes on that that piece that was written off. If that's a true debt settlement versus a postponement of payments or something. And then, you know, and then my second piece was just in many cases, oftentimes if you try to settle with, say, American Express or Visa or change the terms, they often say that's fine, but you no longer have spending power or authority on that line of credit. So I just didn't know if you had any considerations of how that might impact your user adoption.
Got it. So on the first thing, when we say debt settlement, we're trying to sort of avoid writing off any debt, and we're trying to sort of work with in our negotiation space. We would be sort of talking about the other terms, right? Like extending debt, maybe taking off the penalty rates, taking off the penalty fees, and sort of trying to lower the interest rates. So those are the first few criteria that we work with the banks on. And later on, if the customer can still handle it, then we would look at the settlement option. But that is sort of the last on our books, because that's not favorable for the customer, nor is it favorable for the lender. On your second question, after 90 days, banks tend to sort of write off the debt and take it off their books. But in our case, and what they do is they sort of pass it on to debt collectors after that, maybe sort of sell it off at a discount. With our solution, we hope that the banks would be able to sort of keep some of it and settle it eventually instead of writing it completely off. I hope those two answers answer your questions.
Yeah, they do. Thank you.
All right.
I have a question. What would prevent the banks, or why wouldn't the banks just do this themselves? Obviously, between fintech and disrupting, and then also the banks having to innovate in areas where they traditionally haven't. This introduces a new platform that end users would have to use, that they would have to integrate into their environment and potentially have dynamics that they'd have to deal with. Why wouldn't they just do it themselves?
That's a very fair question. And banks have been quite complacent in the debt collection sector, and they have not really made a move because it's actually not a very profitable segment for the banks to sort of venture into. This is not their core business. Debt collections is not something that they want to do. They want to just get it off their books, pass it on to a debt collector. That is really cheaper for the banks to do. Developing a solution in-house is definitely something that the banks can do, but we're trying to sort of make it easier for the banks by providing them with that platform and also providing a cheaper way to sort of collect debt. Our research has indicated that current debt collectors charge about 20 to 50% in commissions on debt collections. In our case, we'll be charging about 10 to 15 to 20%. So it's going to be a cheaper solution for the bank, and we would be sort of providing them with the platform. So the banks can certainly do it, but we believe that our solution would be something that the banks can easily integrate.
Okay, thanks.
So I have a number of questions that I would like to ask. So first of all, I like the demonstration of your app. That was very nice because I could see more comprehensively, which I couldn't quite collect that all just reading your business plan. So demonstrating your app was very, very good. But that also shows that you are in one app on one client. You are pulling data from many different debt sources, right? They could have 2 or 3 charge cards. They could have student loans. They could have all of those things. So I have to assume, or you can clarify, are you collecting all of that data from them?
Oh, so no. I'm sorry. Do you have? Yeah, go ahead, please.
So you are not collecting that data. How is that data there?
Oh, so we'll be working with integrators who have access to that data. So these are the Flings, the Intuits, and Celery of the world, who the banks have vetted and sort of approved.
Okay, so are you not collecting any data at all from your clients?
We would not be collecting customer-related data, but we would be collecting settlements data that would allow us to sort of improve our negotiation offers later on.
Okay, so then the integrators are updating on a monthly basis?
Yeah, I think they're connected real time with the bank, with some of the banking systems.
All right, so then clarify for me, and I apologize, I'm just trying to get my head around this. So it is a third party that is collecting everybody's proprietary information that you can then negotiate, we're only going to pay $200 on that thing this month is what we'd like to do, and $400 on that thing that we'd like to do. So somebody else is collecting all of that data. You are not sitting on customers' private data.
The customer's private data would be owned by the bank. The integrators would provide us with access, with safe access to it, but we would not be able to sort of collect very sensitive information about the customers. But we would still be able to collect settlement information, how the customers negotiate, which would allow us to use it later on, improve our settlement offers.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I just needed that clarification.
Okay.
So then what happens is that I understand a debtor owes multiple things and is trying to negotiate so that they can shake this out. So when I look at your model, I feel that your real customer is the creditor, not the debtor.
That is correct. That is correct. We are a B2B platform.
Okay, so it seems like you would have a lot of people that said, good grief, I've been screwed by COVID. I've got all these things going on. I'm a good person. I want to pay it. But at the end of the day, I see that your business plan is going to be made or broken on your ability to keep creditors, not debtors. Because hopefully the debtors go away after a while. Would you agree?
That's correct. So sustainability would depend on how many banks that we can onboard.
Okay, so then in the current model, what you have is you've got, somebody with big muscles, pounding on the poor debtor. But you have a more, and you've described it as a more humanitarian method, so that people are not shamed and they're not beaten on and they're not, harassed. What happens, or have you explored, if all these negotiations happen and you're not powering and pounding on people? What happens after the negotiations if the debtors are not following through? What are you going to do to maintain your creditors?
So at the start, we have segmented our customers based on two main criteria: their willingness and their ability to settle debt. So at the start, we will be mostly focusing on customers who are willing and who are able, and customers who are willing but not able. We're trying to sort of provide a solution to them at the start. Later on, maybe we can expand it to customers who are not willing and not able. But at the start, our product is going to be focused on those two segments. So customers who really want to work out a solution and then get out of the trap that they've sort of got themselves into.
Fantastic. And I hate to dominate here, but I'm really trying to power it. And then finally, your business, is it mostly just supporting an app, or do you also have folks who are working to collect money?
So it would be, the payment portion of the app would be fully digitized. So customers will be able to maybe do like an e-transfer, or there would be like a set of payment mechanisms that we set up, and they would be able to do the payment themselves. We would not have any muscle collecting debt, if that's that's what you're talking about.
Good on you. Thank you. All right.
Kate, you're on mute.
I'm curious about the current environment, at least here in the States, with talk about how the Biden administration may be canceling student loan debt. Also, just in terms of the pandemic has actually allowed people to increase their level of savings overall. Could you talk a little bit more about, maybe, I loved your go-to-market strategy. I thought that was a really great presentation of how you're thinking. But talk to a little bit about the current environment with maybe people not in debt. Like how will you be able to position yourself to your creditors and then to the customers?
Just to clarify, so you're talking about people whose debt would be canceled?
Yeah, well, I'm just saying in general that the environment seems to be lately with the environment now that there's not as much, people don't have as much individual debt. So maybe just talk a little bit about, going into a market where there may not be as potentially large of debt size. And so forth. And maybe I'm curious, you had such a broad range of your customer demographic from 25 to 55. That to me seems really very broad in terms of sort of, total salary levels of people and so forth. So maybe talk a little bit about your experience in researching that demographic, and if you have any sort of strategy about what area of that demographic you would try to target first.
Yeah, sure. So to answer, maybe Cesar can jump in on the second part of the question, but to answer the first as to like a gut feeling of the market, what we've sort of found out is that true, people have a lot more savings, people have been getting money from the government, but it's really a certain segment of the market is still under a lot of stress, like certain part-time workers, they're still under a lot of stress. There are still a lot of delinquencies taking place. People have been talking about a K recovery. So, and we believe that a certain segment of the market is going to be very well, not so very well off going forward. And there will be a lot more delinquencies happening in the future. Even when the economy recovers, it's not going to be an equivalent recovery. So we don't think that the collections, the the problem with delinquencies is going to go away anytime soon, just because people have maybe a little bit of savings. And we do say that bank is sort of wanting to digitize this space. We've had multiple discussions with PMO and CIBC who have told us that they're trying to sort of look into this space. It's a big reputational risk for them to use debt collectors to collect on debt, because they end up on the news, and it's just really bad rep for the banks. Cesar, if you want to take the question on customer segmentation.
Yeah, exactly. Just to build on that, the reason why we captured this segment was exactly because of that case, because we found that usually the student loans are directly related with the government, right? So if they decided to reduce the options, then our market would shrink. So what we've done is that we are focusing that segment because we don't depend on the student loans. It's mostly consumer debt. And that specific range, 25 to 55, and actually if we can narrow it a little bit more, 25 to 35, is the highest level of debt. That's where our market is more attractive and more lucrative. So those are the individuals that would find our option interesting, because they will be able to keep their credit scores by dealing directly with the financial institutions.
Thank you.
I hope that answers it.
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
Today, I'm going to present an advanced wound healing system for horses. Talking about the market problem, I should start with this beautiful ranch. So the question is that, what's the problem with this ranch? The answer is this ranch is far from medical or veterinary centers. And when a horse gets injured, that is a common thing in these types of ranch, the ranch owner will be into trouble. In this case, she will have two main options: taking the injured horse to a veterinary center or calling a vet, and second, using current wound care products. Choosing the first option, we will have four main problems: the high cost of vet visit, long distance, transportation expense, and personal time. And at last, we should mention that horse injury can get worse by waiting. Choosing the second option, we will notice that the current wound care products in the market could deal with either healing the wound or stop bleeding or disinfect the wound, so they are not effective enough. They need a vet to apply in most cases. Their healing rate is too slow and they last for 1 or 2 days, need a dressing change. So finding this gap into the market, we notice that our product can fulfill this gap in the market. So we present our innovative solution for the market, that is a wound bioadhesive, would be applied to the surface of wound, and the film on the right-hand side, you can see, will form on the surface of wound and will stick to the surface of wound. So Biocilaxy is a wound bioadhesive with two main components that will be combined together and sprayed to the surface of wound. At the first step, it's a liquid and will form a film on the surface of wound with 6 main features that I'm going to discuss them. The first one is immediate blood clotting. It stops bleeding in less than 30 seconds. It accelerates wound healing by the ability to load drugs like painkillers and growth factors. And it prevents infection by antibacterial and antimicrobial materials in the formulation. And you don't need to be a medical expert to apply these products. Everyone can do that. It's a very important point. And it saves vet bill costs and dressing change costs. And it will last for 2 or 3 weeks by one application. So it saves time, saves dressing change expenses, and also decrease the risk of dressing change for injured horse. And for this part of market, that is our beachhead market, we don't need any FDA or USDA regulatory approval. That makes our products capital efficient. Talking about the current status, we have 2 years of completed lab research. We finalized the formulation for our bioadhesive. for horse uses and did the characterization test. Our next step would be producing the prototype and doing in vivo and in vitro tests. Having interviewed with 80 professionals in different fields, from physicians to the highway patrols and also ranch owners, we got very great feedbacks from ranch owners in the remote area, and because of that, we chose our beachhead market. And we have the intellectual property of these products at the Oklahoma State University. You can see the disclosure number, and we are going to subject a licensing agreement with OSU and anticipate 2.5% royalty. Talking about wound care products in the market, we have two main segments: blood clotting products and wound healing products. We have lots of products in these two segments, but we can proudly say that Biocilaxy is the only product in the market that can support these two applications. So we are the first mover in the market, and this is our strength point. And talking about 10 main features of good product in this market, Biocilaxy performs much better than the competitors. And because of that, we're proud of our products. Now I want to ask Kevin to continue the presentation.
There we go. Thank you, Saeed. What I want to do is start with the beachhead market. According to the USDA, there are nearly 460,000 horse owners that live on remote ranches or farms. A remote ranch or farm is anything that's more than 30 minutes away from the nearest equine veterinarian or veterinarian hospital. On those farms, there are nearly 2.8 million horses. Based on our customer interviews, we determined that on annual average, that a horse owner is going to purchase our product on 4 times. And this is based on the injury rate of when you have 10 or more horses in a paddock area. With that, we anticipate an industry size of $41 million per year, and that's a recurring industry. Based on all the benefits that Saeed talked about, we determined the unit value proposition of this product to be $755. We're going to charge the customer $60. That means this has a 12x return in terms of benefit to cost. And because of that, it's a low cost entry point to encourage horse owners to try and use our product. Our beachhead market, I just discussed, it's the 2.8 million horses. We anticipate it to be about a $41 million recurring market. The total addressable market in the United States involves 7.2 million horses, and that could result in $104 million annually. If we were to expand this product into other markets like horses around the world, you could potentially be looking at an $800 million market. The beauty of BioSeal is that it can be used on other animals such as cats, dogs, and it can be used for humans. It can be used in surgeries, and it can be used in emergency situations. And so if you look at this chart, you can see that there's a great potential for market growth using Biocilaxy. Our business model is simple. We're going to outsource our production to an existing pharmaceutical company in hopes that this company will be interested in purchasing BioSeal as an exit strategy. Our cost to produce the product is estimated at $12 a unit. We'll purchase the product in bulk and we'll store it at a flex warehouse space. The best thing about Biocilaxy is that we can specifically target our beachhead market. We know that they read several print advertisements or several print magazines, and they also attend a variety of horse expositions and stock shows. So we can find these people and get the product to them. But more importantly, based on Google Analytics, we have determined that there are 5,000 Google searches every day for horse cut, horse puncture, equine wound management. That is 1.8 million searches every year by horse owners looking for a solution. And BioSeal is that solution. Our sales model is twofold. We'll use a web sales model where we'll drive traffic to a website hosted by Shopify that'll be robust enough to endorse videos and to complete the sale. We'll also use indirect sales models like Amazon, Murdoch's, and Vet Valley. For shipping, we estimated the cost is going to be $1.95 a unit. We're going to upcharge that to $4.95. This will give us a second stream of revenue for our company. Our management team, between the two of us, we have 40 years of business experience between us. We have 10 years of STEM research and development, 8 scholarly articles published, an approved patent, and the successful launch of a family lifestyle business. Both Saeed and I are PhD students. Saeed's a PhD in chemical engineering, which gives him the background to develop the product. And I have a background, and my PhD is in entrepreneurship. We have an outstanding advisory board to help us. We have 2 equine veterinarians from prestigious veterinarian schools. One's from Kansas State University. The other one's from Oklahoma State University. We have a technical advisor to help with the development of the product from Oklahoma State University, as well as a business advisor from the School of Entrepreneurship at Oklahoma State. And then we actually have a horse home. Amber Wiley's a horse stable manager of 50 head of horses outside of Tabernash, Colorado. In terms of use of funds, the first 3 years are going to be focused on product development, and we're going to rely on grant funding to develop the product. We'll look at sources like the National Science Foundation, the Morris Animal Foundation, as well as the USDA. The first year will focus on prototype and in vitro evaluations. The estimated cost is $70,000. In year 2, we'll move towards the alpha unit test, and we'll need to raise $230,000 through grants. And then finally, year 3 is when we'll complete the product, doing our field beta test at an estimated cost using grant funding of $250,000. Year 4 is when we'll launch the product into market. And to have a successful business launch, we are going to seek $600,000 from an angel syndication. This will be a Series A prepared issue with a 1x liquidation preference and a 5% dividend. It's estimated to result in a 25% stake in Biocilaxy. 60% of that funds are going to be devoted towards the marketing and sales to successfully launch Biocilaxy into the market. Our financial projections look like this. In year 4, when we launch the product, we expect to have nearly $2.7 million of revenue. And that's selling approximately 41,000 units to 11,000 different customers. Our gross profit margin is 80%, and we will be profitable in the first year with a 16% profit margin. In year 5, a couple of things are going to happen. First, we're going to increase our marketing expenses 25%. We're also going to have the recurring purchases from our existing client base, which based on our interviews is 4 times per year. This will increase our revenue dramatically. It's about $6.5 million. Our gross profit margin will remain the same, but our profit margin will increase to 37%. Because of the recurring purchases, our customer acquisition cost is going to dramatically drop, and that's going to lead to the greater profits. Our exit strategy is simple. Sometime between years 6 to 8, we'll look to get acquired by a larger firm in the animal biotechnology industry. These 4 companies right here have been actively purchasing companies within the last 5 years that are similar to Biocilaxy. Biocilaxy has first mover product advantage because it's the only product that immediately stops bleeding and accelerates wound healing. It has a very attractive unit value proposition of $755, which encourages horse owners to try and use our product, and it'll displace expensive veterinarian bills. There's no FDA or USDA regulatory approval. It means we get the product to market faster, cheaper, and it's only going to require 1 round of funding to launch the product. This is a very motivated customer base. We talked to over 80 different people in our initial reviews, and this is the base that put up their hand and said, yes, we need this product. They are actively on Google searching, they read trade magazines, they go to horse shows. We can find them, we can target them, we can sell the product to them. The beachhead market has the potential of $41 million a year recurring, but the total addressable market in the United States is $104 million. And that doesn't even include expanding the market to other pets or eventually human use. With that, we can offer a very attractive investor return of 10x. Biocilaxy, the XE stands for extreme, because oftentimes horses need extreme healing. So at this point, Saeed and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I thought it was really interesting. Can you talk about what you're getting from Oklahoma State and if there's any risk in negotiating? You know, it sounds like you haven't finalized that negotiation. So curious what you're getting, and then also curious where you are with it and any risk around that.
Sure. Phage, why don't you go ahead and start?
You mean for the production of for the royalty expense?
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like obviously you're giving them a royalty because you're getting something, and you have to negotiate that. And so I'm curious both what you're getting, where you are in negotiation, and kind of is any risk on that 2.5% kind of dynamic.
These numbers that we came up with is based on our previous experience in our research group. We developed a bioreactor, and Oklahoma State University support all expenses for the submitting patent, and we got the patent approval for that product, and all expenses were was with Oklahoma State University, and they also provide all equipment and also lab instruments for developing our products. So this patent would be a thing between us and Oklahoma State University. So for the production of that, we will have 2.5% royalty. And this number comes, this is not finalized, but this comes from our previous experience in our research group for that bioreactor. I don't know if I answered.
Yeah, just a follow up. So is because they gave you the access to the university is the reason why they would be getting a joint patent. Is that the dynamic?
Yes. Yeah. This is what's going on. They will support us in all steps for submitting the patent, and they will pay the expenses.
Gotcha.
And and now we are working in the Oklahoma State University's lab to develop the product. So
can I clarify? This is not tied to any faculty research, right? This is a student endeavor, correct?
Correct.
No, the patent is between me and my advisor, Dr. Joshua Ramsey. You saw the advisory board.
All right, so it is a tied to faculty research then.
Yes.
All right.
I just want to make a comment. I think you guys did a really great job at looking at the market and the competitive space. Excellent job on that. It looked like you guys were very thorough on that. So good job there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Jeff. I'll also echo, I think great job in identifying the market, and having had an animal not at the level of a horse that has injured himself multiple times over the years, I can see the value of a product like this, and I definitely would have been a customer, which is great. I'd be curious to know, you're talking about getting the patent and your pathway towards market. How mature is the technology at this point of time? I mean, are you able to make a sheet large enough to stick to a horse and actually test it out, or where in the life cycle of the development are you?
For developing our product, I don't know how much I should go through the details, but for this development, we had the experience of developing similar bioadhesives in our research that they passed all the in vivo results for the animals. That structure that provides the adhesiveness and good fatigue and good sealing, we have done that before. But here, we changed our uniqueness for the submitting the patent is about the formulation and the structure of doing this product. This product is the first product that the polymerization will happen on the surface of wound using the blood on the surface of wound and oxygen to provide a film. So a liquid will be sprayed to the surface of wound using that liquid on the surface of wound, moisture on the surface of wound, and oxygen to provide a film that forms in less than 10 seconds, and that completely seals the wound. So we did characterization tests for our products, but for doing clinical trial, our product passed all the characterization tests like fatigue, stress relaxation, modulus, and other and tachiness and other tests. So we are pretty sure, based on other research we have done before, and the formulation we have that provides the structure, not the formulation. We got very good results for that. So because of that, we confident about the results we can get. So our concern would be just based on our estimation, it should stop bleeding in 30 seconds, less than 30 seconds. It could, but in case of severe wounds, it may just increase a couple of seconds more. That would be our just main concern. But for the common wounds, that's are common among these types of horse, mostly open wounds, it would perfectly perform.
I had one follow-up question just about why the 4 years? Is that because of all the development that you're doing? But why does it take 4 years to get to where you're selling it from now?
It's part of our research. You know, for our research, we have some main issues. That one of the issues is doing in vivo tests and clinical trial tests. For the in vivo test, it may take about 6 to 7 months. And for clinical trial, it will last at least 1.5 years. So the main part that we reach to the market and getting good results would be about in vivo tests and clinical trial tests. Because, you know, for the clinical trial, we should have consent from the other side to apply our products. We should have volunteers. So for example, for companies like Moderna or Pfizer that they had vaccination for clinical trial, that was an easy case for them. But it took 6 months for those companies, those great companies. They are global companies. But our prediction is about just spending about 2 years for doing in vivo tests and clinical trial tests.
Yeah, I would see if you could shorten that time a little bit, because it sounds like you have a great product, you have a market that's ready for it, and you know that timeline seems a little bit long to get it to market. So I would see if you could cut down that time a little bit, especially if there's not, you know, a lot of FDA approvals that are needed and things like that. It might not be necessary.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
You know, and see what you can do in parallel as well to save the time. So I think, you know, that fast market, you get that first mover advantage, right? And with all those other players, what kind of crossover could you anticipate? You showed that slide of, you know, we have the blood clotting side and then we have the other, you know, to what extent could any of those players existing in the market, you know, cross over or partner with the others to somehow offer something similar and compete with you directly? Do you think that's possible for them with what they have?
The point about the current products in the market is that they are mostly just using the drugs, you know, we are developing a product in case of tissue engineering and regenerative medicine. We provided an scaffold for those drugs that they are using. We load that drugs and that agents to our platforms, and our platforms exceed the performance because of the structure. You know, when you add a blood clotting products to a surface of wound, that could be repelled because of bleeding, and so you should put the pressure. But our product sticks to the surface of wound and use that moisture for the adhesiveness. So in this case, we will have both pressure and also blood clotting agent together to exceed the performance. Here is the point, and here is our advantage. And because of that, this sticking to the surface of products provide a long-lasting film and sealing on the surface of wound. So in fact, we combine those two, and in the current market products, especially in our beachhead market, I want to mention this point, and why we started this point, is that there is no currently product even close to our products in this our beachhead market, but for human use, we will have some competitors that they are able to do such product.
Is there any reason why the current people who do it for humans couldn't just apply to your market?
Maybe my next question.
The point is that the companies that provide this product, not exactly, because we are going to subject a patent, that they are able to do this. They have the money, they have the capital budget to do such experiment and projects. They are involved in the human market, like Johnson & Johnson, like 3M. They do not enter to the such small markets by wasting their time and their capital investment. And and for them it's better to buy companies like us, not directly entering, starting a research from the beginning and doing this and just wasting their time and money. It's better for them to just buy our companies like us and having the ready products to just produce, having manufacturing. And
absolutely true, because I spent 8 years at Johnson & Johnson in M&A. And so that, you know, what you said is exactly dead on. And because otherwise it's creating a whole new, you know, like a startup and a whole new category and everything. And they're not really, you know, big companies like that are very risk averse, especially a conservative company like a J&J. And so, you know, to buy a startup, it's like, you know, they're averting some risk because that smaller company has already kind of gone through that, all the trials and tribulations of, you know, what a startup goes through. So you're on point for sure.
Thank you.
Good job.
I think this is a very needed concept, very, very nicely presented. I think that to launch the product, you will need money. And I do think going for your angel round, it's probably 3 years from now or 2 years from now, 600 is probably light. And I would also say that a lot of angel investors, you know, they're looking for a bigger market than you have, or they're looking, you know, something more glamorous than wounds on horses. So one of the things I would encourage you to explore is, you know, with the 2012 Jobs Act, it allows for a lot different kinds of raising money. And I think your best source of equity is going to be people who are horse owners. A lot of folks who have a lot of money, they love horses, they love all of this, and they will get jazzed about a product like this. So when you get to that point, that's what you want to look at. You don't want to go to angels that put money in biotech and put money in, you know, software. You want to go for people who want your product, and that's where I would encourage you to go. I think you can raise your 600 or $1 million very, very fast if you go to the right investors.
And to echo off that, I also think you can do that sort of raise today, right? I don't think you need to wait several years for it. I mean, there's definitely a market, and this might be a loaded comment because I know it comes with some pitfalls too, but you're looking at grants that often take a long time to get. And I would encourage you to look at it. I mean, I think that's a great way to go. But at the same time, if you've got a defined market and it sounds like your technology really just needs that scalability to get to market, you may look at raising more, doing it sooner, and just shortening your pathway towards market. Because it doesn't sound, and I've said this earlier this morning, it doesn't sound like you need a pre-scheduled miracle to get out in front of your market and make revenue. So whatever you could do to accelerate that is probably going to be in your best interest.
Appreciate the feedback.
We will have feedback later. We have time for one more question, probably. Teresa?
Oh, I was just going to make a comment that it is true. A lot of these investors, they specialize in certain things. Like there's investors that only invest in beauty or biotech or this or that. And so, this is a little more niche. So it could be very interesting. I liked the suggestion of going after horse owners because they are going to have more passion behind it. And investors do look at certain, industries and categories.
Hi, my name's Daniel Freed. I'm one of the co-founders of GeneGazer Incorporated, and we provide genomics for personalized prenatal nutrition. So what is that? Well, it's science for healthy babies. We want to commercialize a lot of existing research to help improve the health of mothers and babies with personalized nutrition. So back in the day, 1998, they added folic acid to bread, primarily to increase the nutrient density so women can have healthier babies. Folic acid is very important for preventing neural tube defects. And this is done before conception, specifically because neural tube defects form early in birth. So folic acid was added to all the grains to help out pregnant women. But folic acid is different than bioavailable folate. So about 1 in 3 women have these genetic changes to the way their bodies process vitamin B9. This impacts their metabolism and increases their risk of pregnancy complications. Here's our current customer, Olivia. She has existing 23andMe data. She extracts that data from 23andMe and then uploads it to a third-party service called NutraHacker. NutraHacker.com spits out an analysis of her analysis, and then she has to go look at various websites, Reddit, Google, read scientific papers to parse through exactly what she needs to do to buy the prenatal supplements and have an ideally healthy baby. GeneGazer wants to streamline this. We want to take this complex manual process and provide a relatively simple end-to-end solution that leverages precision medicine and personalization to give Olivia exactly what she needs for a healthy baby. Our biggest value proposition is this is precision targeted. We're going to use genomics to directly find and target these specific metabolic changes, and we provide an end-to-end solution combining genetics and nutrition into a single streamlined service to help mothers and doctors and babies. Our biggest value is healthy moms and healthy babies. These nutritional interventions have some efficacy. Studies have shown that autism risks can be influenced by nutritional intervention, and postpartum depression risks can be treated through nutritional intervention. These are not well commercialized, and the research just has not been applied because of the complexity of these systems. So here's our digital health pipeline. We're going to take health history and genetics and devise an intervention. Then Olivia will take this intervention and we'll retest. We'll test for some biomarkers. We'll follow up with her to get her experiences in this. And then we can modify the intervention to provide real precision medicine. Precision medicine is based on omics and P4 and all kinds of buzzwords, but essentially it is predictive, preventative, personalized, and precipitory. So we are trying to predict these issues through the genetics and the health history. We're trying to prevent them by intervening, and ideally, Gene Gazer would intervene pre-conception, not be put on board in the first trimester when a woman discovers she's pregnant, but we would be there from the start as a woman's health provider. It's personalized. We're involving her doctor. We're involving these biomarker tests to make sure that this is functioning correctly. And it's precipitory because she is involved in her own treatment. She's taking these things, she's being tested, and we're following up with Olivia because she needs to direct this herself, because that is the heart of precision medicine, is to increase patient engagement and provide a better service through these P4 metrics. So we have some breaking news. This wasn't in our business plan. We're working with Dr. Jizhong Shi of Ginfinity Precision Medicine. He's also the department head of OBGYN at Medical College of Georgia in Augusta. So Dr. Shi has been helping us develop the workflows for preconception testing and biomarker testing. He has a background in rapid biomarker screening, immunology, genetics, and pregnancy. So he is an amazing resource for us. First, we do the genetics and the health history and design a relatively basic supplement that would involve things like folate, B12, the fatty acids, DEA, DHA. And then after 6 weeks, we do a biomarker testing service. And that would gauge the vitamin levels to see the impact our nutrients are having, gauge oxidative stress to see if there's any issues. And depending on the stage of pregnancy, we could integrate STI testing pre-pregnancy for looking for things like herpes, an iron deficiency and glucose levels later in pregnancy to detect things like anemia and gestational diabetes. So this provides an integrated solution, and we can continuously iterate on our supplements and provide a truly personalized product. So Gene Gazer was founded in 2018 as a C corporation, and we got a Phase 0 grant in 2019 for developing an SBIR. Our grant was focused on mental health genetic risk factors, but we've pivoted towards these prenatals and precision medicine in 2021 because a lot of the biochemical intervention is the same. We were looking at folate biochemistry primarily for genetic risk factors and mental illness. So that was a very simple pivot for us, at least technically, just to move from the folate biochemistry into the prenatal biochemistry. And we think this is a much more exciting and higher impact area for us to focus on. So now you're probably asking, why isn't someone doing this? Well, genetics is complicated. Genomics involves dealing with multiple genes, gene-gene interactions, gene-environment interactions. It's not the easiest thing in the world, and it's a new field. So genetics in 2021 really looks like the internet in 1990 or microcomputers in 1978. What we're seeing is massive drops in cost, and we're seeing the first consumer products really be put on the market and be easy and friendly enough for a consumer to use. There's also challenges with FDA regulation. Most of our competitors are trying to avoid the FDA. We think this also presents opportunities in addition to challenges, especially with certain things. Folate, for instance, has 3 of the 12 authorized health claims, which can be made on packaging without FDA clearance. And the same way, Gene Gazer is conceptualizing this as a medical food, which would be essentially prescribed by a doctor, similar to the way that the hospital grade Ensure meal replacement beverages are provided. And then our final challenge is the orthodoxy. Essentially, the status quo hasn't changed since 1998, when the government published their final recommended daily allowances and added folic acid to the grain supply. So we want to update this. It's been 2 decades, and genetics points the way to being able to put precision medicine into the clinic. What's the cost of a healthy baby? Well, there's about 4 million births a year, and $100 billion is spent on maternity care. There's also about $42 billion spent on supplements each year. Now, genetic analysis, as I said, the cost has been dropping. In the year 2000, genetic sequencing cost $100 million. You needed a government appropriation, a team of scientists, and multiple labs. In the year 2000, in the year 2020, it's about $1,000. The cost of sequencing is falling. As you can see, the cost per human genome was keeping up with Moore's law, and then it dropped precipitously in the last decade. So we have gone from being $10 million sequenced genome to $1,000 in 2020. There will also be quite a bit of genetic testing resources freed up as COVID ends. So what we're seeing is this price could go even lower. So our direct competitors are normal prenatals, first and foremost. They're inexpensive, they're not personalized, and there's essentially no follow-up. On the other end, there is the fertility clinic, which is very, very expensive. They also don't really offer a personalized nutrition unless they send you to a dietitian or similar professional. They're just going to give you nice off-the-shelf prenatals, and their follow-up is similarly limited. Once you've gone through the reproductive therapies, either you get pregnant or you don't. You use their service and get transitioned to your family care doc and the midwives, or you don't. So here is Ritual. They are a prenatal and multivitamin company. They've raised $50 million with $12 million raised in 2020. They're a great company, but they aren't personalized. They are essentially just a novel encapsulation of existing prenatal nutrients. And on the other end, there's Routine. Routine provides a nutrigenic DNA test to do what we're proposing, and then they have a subscription service, but this is a multivitamin, and it's not specifically targeted for pregnancy. So our subscription competitors, there's a number of pregnancy boxes and wellness subscriptions. So there's people like Stork Bag. They provide consumer products for pregnancy. They send you a box every trimester, and it's just cute consumer products for pregnant women. It's a cool company, but not medical. And then there's people like Keeps. This is a hair loss subscription. They have over-the-counter and prescription drugs in a subscription retail format. And the same way, there's Picnic, which is an allergy subscription, and that's personalized using health history. There's Cove, which treats migraines and similarly uses health history, but they've added supplements to the over-the-counter and prescription treatments. And then there's Evans, which provides GERD treatment. This is, again, personalized based on health history and provides prescription and over-the-counter treatment. All of these are actually owned by a single company, 30 Madison. So in 2020, we saw $2.3 billion in VC funding in the retail health and wellness space, and 30 Madison has raised about $90 million with $47 million in the last year. They are focused on these retail services, which aren't truly precision medicine, but they're a new way to give, yes, Katie, there's a new way to give retail wellness health to the individual. So I'm going to hand this off to Sam to go over our pricing and finances.
Excellent. Thank you, Daniel. Hello, my name is Sam West, co-founder of GeneGazer. Our pricing structure for the subscription prenatal is going to begin at $99 for no commitment, and that's per month. This keeps us consistent with our competitors. Acquisition. These early stages have designed a discount schedule to incentivize new clients. Our discounts range from 9% off the monthly purchase price for a minimum 3-month commitment term and increases discount amount an additional 9% per 3-month commitment, up to a 36% discount for a 12-month commit. And this pricing model allows us to launch operations earlier, begin acquiring and retaining clients while minimizing the risks of revenue decline due to churn through our commitment-based discount offering. We expect to break even in early 2022, assuming a 3-month commitment period for each customer as a baseline and using a subscriber growth rate of 15% per month to project 2021 revenues. We've included our estimated lab testing expenses, which are one-time cost incurred per the onboarding of a client. This allows us to cover all operating expenses associated with a customer, even when customers do not commit to the full 3-month trial. Our management team consists of Dr. Shizhong Shi, PhD in genetics and biomarkers, Andrea Christensen, biochemist, alternative medicine practitioner Ashley Crutchfield, myself, MBA in finance, Lawrence Neal, who's a data science specialist, and Daniel Fried, who is our CEO and everything else. We receive consulting and advising from attorney Urias Johnson, Dr. Richard Lehman, and Will Marshall of Bridgeworks Capital. Before beginning operations, in order to better gain traction, we need to establish a presence in the clinic, working in tandem with the patient-serving community in order to best deliver our service to those who need it. The implications of this clinic-based strategy is a priority on sales and marketing through our first 2 years of operations. Once we are able to establish a clinical presence, we will begin administering genetic tests and delivering personalized supplement solutions. Our minimum viable product will deliver off-the-shelf prenatals selected with the client in mind using customers' genetic profile to provide personalized wellness solution. The user's genetic data then joins that of other clients and is integrated into our machine learning platform for precision medicine. Our ask is a little over $500,000 in exchange for 20% stake in GeneGazer. This puts our valuation implied at approximately $2.77 million. We're hoping to employ these funds to improve testing capabilities, expand on marketing and advertising to help get us into the clinic, and expand the business operation to build out the platform. These are the next steps that we view to be essential in building out our early stage development. At this point, we'd like to thank you for your time, attention, and any questions you may have. You can find out more about us at genegazer.com or reach us directly at ceo@genegazer.com. Thank you for your time, and we now open the floor to questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Teresa Buell. So about your business model, the subscription model, what made you choose subscription model over, let's say, another model? There's a lot of subscription type of business models out there. And for something like this that's nutrition based, that's very common for something that you're going to get on a recurring basis. Like you already know what your let's say nutritional supplement is, like, let's say every month, and you want to have it on a renewal subscription base and have it check you. So that's one thing. But a lot of what you're talking about is taking this genetic data, doing the testing, the monitoring, and coming up with that recommendation to then get to that, let's say recommendation for what that product is that they would use on an ongoing basis, or at least for the time of pregnancy or preconception. So I'm wondering, did you ever consider something where you say, okay, how about a one-time fee? This is what you're going to get. You're going to get all this testing. It's one-time fee, and this will cover you. It's a service that you're paying for. This fee is a service. And then on top of that service, sure, you would buy products on an ongoing basis or monthly basis or whatever. But I that was the first thing that came to mind when I read your business plan, because, when people think about a subscription service and they're having a baby and all of this, it's like a financial thing that, oh, I've got to pay for this every month. It sounds more like a burden than saying, okay, I only have to pay for something one time, but maybe you can say, well, you can pay it in 3 payments. Then you don't have to think about discounting the subscription and that kind of thing, because your wellness is not really something you want to discount. So I know it's a long-winded question, but did you ever think about another model?
Yes, and we've thought about that. Like I read a fascinating article about SaaS pricing where they said that realistically you want to do annual plans. There's no reason to have big discount schedules and multiple different tiers, but at the same time it makes the product easier for us to think about as a subscription service versus a single large payment. And I'm not sure exactly if the single large payment would be preferable from a marketing standpoint, but it does make it easier for us to model. So it's a great idea, and we'd love to look into that. But at the same time, it's we're trying to fit in with our competition, and that seems to be subscription based.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think that definitely I like the idea of the one-time fee. I think what drove us away from that was the focus on prenatals, and that it's going to be something that's we're looking at about a year or less timeline on average. And so it's easier for us rather than to offer a year-long commitment that may be a higher upfront cost. Moving forward and integrating new products and services.
So what I was the one fee, okay, well, you could pay that off over several months or whatever, but then you wouldn't have to discount it. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, totally. And there's also the issue where if we're targeting preconception, that is a pretty variable amount of time, especially for people who are having infertility issues. The average couple for a planned pregnancy takes 6 to 12 months before they actually get pregnant. So that's an additional 6 to 12 variable months on top of the 9 months of pregnancy, and then maybe some kind of postnatal product as well. So I understand that it would probably be a cleaner model to use a single large fee, but there's also the question of the follow-up biomarker testing, which is another big question mark. We're literally working on that this week, so I don't have good numbers for the follow-up tests because we're going to be doing multiple follow-up tests to provide precision medicine.
Yeah, and I would think that multiple tests would be part of that kind of package you buy into and say, look, you want to have a baby, you want it to be a healthy baby, we're going to personalize the nutrition for you. You know, you pay this fee one time kind of upfront, and what you're getting for it is we test you at this point, and then so many weeks later we test you again and we test you again, something like that. Because why would somebody want to do just part of the program? You know, I see it more like a program, and then of course on top of that, once you recommend something to them, that's something that, you know, could be like a subscription ongoing, whether or not they want to take your recommendation or not, kind of take it or leave it. But it seems like the service that you're offering is something that is somewhat comprehensive, and I wouldn't think anyone would want to only do part of it. You know, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Let's Teresa, we will have a feedback opportunity and coaching later this afternoon. So are there other questions from other judges?
Yeah, this is Jeff. I've got a question. So love the concept. You know, how would you prevent other companies? I know you're focused very much on the prenatal side of things, which doesn't seem to have a lot of competitors, but there's companies like Inside Tracker and other ones that do very similar testing for athletes or for people that are trying to do certain things in their lives. That they're established in the market and playing. How do you build up your sort of competitive advantage and defenses to stop some of those companies from doing exactly what they're doing, but for this market segment?
Yeah, great question. And there's two components to that. The first is we really think that targeting key opinion leaders in the prenatal care, women's health, OBGYN, midwifery, fertility clinic space, whatever you want to call this entire big industry, by targeting the key opinion leaders and really focusing on being in the clinic and being recommended by doctors, that will have a durable advantage over even a closely tracking follow-on product. And the other one is navigating the FDA regulation, especially with prenatals and the issues there. We're really aiming for being like a medical food, but there's a number of routes, including qualified health claims, which is a claim made by a non-prescription product for health that is supported by scientific evidence, or a full FDA drug trial for efficacy. So any of those navigating around the rocks of the FDA provides significant cover from competitors, especially when you start to build the AI, machine learning, potentially intellectually protectable components as we get enough clients to have a data set to build a platform, if all that made sense.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Well, nutritional supplements are considered a food in the US. They're not really regulated by the FDA like a drug is. And so, it's not as stringent as, a drug, putting a regular nutritional supplement on the market.
Yeah, although there's a number of prescription folates, there's Deplin and Inlight, which are both prescription-only medical foods that did go through FDA. So we're kind of hoping to be in that weird liminal space between a over-the-counter nutritional supplement and a full drug trial. But it's worth mentioning the drug trial because that is kind of our worst case regulatory scenario.
Other questions from judges, Carlin or Brian?
Yeah, I mean, on the customer journey of this, so you described the space you want to be in very well, but there's kind of a gray area, like how does that customer, unless they go to their doctor and say, I want to have a baby, I'm planning for this, they may or may not tell their provider that they're planning that initially until maybe they're further along, down the line. Have you thought about what is the point where you're actually going to grab that consumer for your service?
Oh, that's a great question. And realistically, our minimum viable product and our actual final product have very different entry points. Our minimum viable product ideally is recommended directly by a doctor we're working with. That's the reason why we have 5 entire subscription customers and 6 the next month to start out, because we're hoping to go through the clinic and be recommended and work closely with a doctor to actually develop this. And they also take some of our liability by actually recommending it and making the medical claims, protecting us from the FDA, where in a final product, we would hopefully be available over the counter, kind of direct to consumer, but realistically more like B2B2C, like us with their doctor to the customer, but not necessarily that the doctor would recommend it, but that the integrated system would, appeal to a woman or a couple who was trying to have a baby. They'd start the trial of the system, get the subscription product or make a one-time payment, and then it would integrate in the clinic for the later stages, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times doctors will, they'll refer something or they'll recommend something and the patient will say, well, where can I get that? And they'll say, go to this website or something like that. And then, take it from there.
Yes, and that's totally our hope for the minimum viable product. And it's also the reason why we need a significant amount of money for sales and marketing, because getting those first few clinic placements or opinion leaders, or however you want to conceptualize that, is really important. And that's really where we start the development of the final product, because it doesn't make much sense without being in the clinic and seeing those pain points and interacting with both the doctor and the customer to build a final product.
Thank you for joining us for the semifinals competition. The winner of track number 4 is Biocilaxy from Oklahoma State University.